Welcome to the Innovation and Compliance Podcast, part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Join us every week as we talk with industry innovators who are making compliance to help business run more efficiently and at the end of the day, more profitably. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And today I have with me Ray Pathak. He is the Nymity COO of TrustArc. So, Ray, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking time to visit with me today.
Thank you for having me on. Pleasure.
So, Ray, Nymity was recently acquired by TrustArc. And what I wanted to ask you is, what did this acquisition bring to Nymity, and how is it going to help you to really expand your customer and client base and provide additional services and products?
Yeah, no, great question. So first of all, just understanding Nymity and TrustArc, two companies that have been in this space for, if you combine, 40 years. TrustArc has been in this space for 20 years, and they started with the certification, the trustee side of things. Nymity has been in this space since 18 years, started really from the research side of things, and really pioneers in this space as it gets more expansive and in regards to laws and so forth. But in regards to us coming together, the idea was we had two large organizations that were in this space. TrustArc really in regards to their strength on the automation side, the technology, Nymity on the research, and folks have known us for the research and frameworks and methodologies and so forth. And bringing it together is really powerful, right? So you bring the automation, the technology from TrustArc, and you bring this research and frameworks, methodology layer come from Nymity, and now you have something really special. So when you look at what we offered, it really complemented each other. There was only a few areas that we overlapped. And not only that, in regards to the culture of the companies is coming together as well. When we were looking out on the market in regards to ways to expand, we quickly realized that TrustArc was the way to go in regards to the vision of things that we could do together. But with Nymity and TrustArc, we now have a full platform where, again, TrustArc didn't have the research side of things, and Nymity didn't have some of the other technology side of things. We put that together, we can now have a full platform that we can offer our customers, help make them successful in their roles.
Ray, you guys have one of the most unique and, frankly, I think, great catchphrases that you utilize, which is, quote, reimagining privacy. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, so a lot of folks think of privacy as another compliance effort, checking boxes. And what we want to do is do more and relook at it in different ways. So in regards to one of the ways that we looked at this is trying to help organizations of just not doing it in regards to compliance, just that checkbox way of doing things, and providing the privacy intelligence embedded within the solutions so that you can do more with less. So you're less time doing manual efforts. And if you get to the information quicker and you know what data you have, being able to do more with your information, what we like to say is unleash your data. So that's part of the reimagining privacy, this checklist approach of I need to do this for the bare minimum. But really what we want to do is empower organizations to understand their data better. And by understanding it, being able to do more with their data. And again, the other kind of catchphrase that we're using is really unleash that data. So when we look at reimagining privacy, it's helping organizations do more, empower them, and try to take that privacy side of an organization from not a disabler, but an enabler, right? And that's what we're trying to help organizations do with some of the technology and the approaches and methodologies that we are coming up with.
Ray, you guys really have an innovative approach to data privacy, and that's something that typically, at least here in the States, we haven't seen a lot of yet. But one of the things that you guys advocate is corporations moving from a wait-and-see approach on data privacy and even data protection to actively managing this issue or these issues through a take-control approach. Why do you think that is so critical in 2020?
Yeah, the wait-and-see approach, it's a low-hanging fruit for organizations on the compliance side. It will solve the problem of today, but not the problem of tomorrow. And you want to take control and be proactive. And not just privacy, but I'm going to relate it obviously about privacy because that's what we're talking about today. So as an example, you have CCPA. CCPA, and I'm just going to relate it back to this. CCPA is a California state law, one jurisdiction. So you could, as a compliance individual, say, you know what, I'm just going to check my boxes and ensure I met my compliance for CCPA, and then wait and see for that next law that comes out. Now, me and you know, and your listeners know, in the U.S., many states are active in new privacy legislation. Nevada now has a privacy law, and there's been talk of a U.S. national. So if you take the wait and see approach, then the next new law that comes out, you're really going to have to start from scratch again and build out the compliance efforts. But if you take a take control approach and look at building out a more comprehensive privacy program, then when a new law comes out, you're just maybe adjusting. So as an example, if you took the take control on CCPA, well now, instead of just looking at California residents and not providing those rights for everyone, why not provide that potentially for everyone? Put a process and a framework in place for that. And not just look at what CCP is prescriptively saying, because it's only saying access requests, but how do you understand where your information is if you don't do something like a data inventory? And so understanding where your information is, your categories of data, which will then help you as new laws come out in the United States. So to take in the control, create a comprehensive privacy program in place, know where your information is, put processes and procedures, your technical organizational measures, and do training. And that's an example of the take control approach, because the wait and see, that's just a failure waiting to happen. Just look at US with those states. If you look at what happened to breach, every state came out with new laws, and that looks like it's happening in privacy. So it's really in your best interest to look at the take control, even though the shortcut might be the wait and see, for example, CCPA. Does that make sense?
It does. Within the Nymity expert platform, I really was intrigued. You've got 4 levels of research. And typically I've seen service providers with 1, perhaps 2 levels of research, but you guys take this down really, I don't want to say to be so cliches to say to the next level, but you really have. So I was wondering if you could maybe walk us through not only the 4 levels of research that are built into the expert platform, but how a client or customer might utilize that in the data privacy space.
Well, I'm not going to go to each of the levels. What I'm going to talk about is more at a higher level. But let me take a step back on the research of what Nymity brings to that. So again, going to the acquisition, that was one of the reasons of Nymity and TrustArc coming together. Nymity has always been a data privacy research organization. That's where they started. That's still DNA is there. And it's from there they expanded into technology and software and frameworks and so forth. And so our differentiator has always been is embedding that research within our tools. And so that the information is available to an individual when they need it. Right. So if you build the automation, the algorithms on the back end, that you always have that information at your ready. Now, the good thing about Nymity and TrustArc coming together, we built expert systems, as you mentioned, and TrustArc on their side was coming up with privacy intelligence. So we were going to the same goal, very similar ways, and now we're bringing it together. So we're talking about the organizations coming together, and we're bringing what we've done. So again, TrustArc on this privacy intelligence, and so they've embedded this intelligence into the software. We built what we called expert systems. And so as an example of this. So I'm bringing it together because the terminology is really privacy intelligence moving forward. I'll give you an example of how that would work. Because we've built the research and the laws and so forth in the tool, say you were doing a privacy impact assessment in Europe, and I'm just going to give you a European example. And there's certain requirements that make something high risk based on the data types and the purposes and so forth. As you're doing an assessment and you're using the tool, instead of you then taking that information down manually and then going back and researching somewhere else or going to legal or consulting to find out if something's high risk, it's already embedded within the tool. It shows up and says, hey, based on this data type and this purpose, the German regulator, because you're processing information there, has said this is high risk, and here's where we got that, and here's the law. Powerful, saves you time. And that's an example of the intelligence that's being built in. On our IRM, Individual Request Manager, and the Nymity DSR, we brought them together. An example of that research being built in is once that individual has been identified, what jurisdiction they're from. Okay, so the request comes in on the portal and it's California or it's Nevada. It then provides the information to the individual. Here's what you need to know based on California law. This is how many days you have. Here's the annotations of the law. And then the next request comes into Nevada, it's popping it up. What is it doing? It's saving you time, because if you didn't have that research built in the automation, then you need to go outside the tool and do your research. You put those two things together, and now you got something powerful because we're saving you time, right? So it's having the research at the right moment when you need it. And that's really the layers that we built in. And again, it's having that, we have a number of different, it's alerts research, it's statistical research, and the rules layer research. All this is really built into that platform, and now we're bringing it together. So again, TrustArc had this privacy intelligence, and that's why when we talk about these organizations coming together, why it was such a great fit, we were going to the same goal, and now we'll be able to do it much quicker together. But that's the approach that makes us different. It's not just empty shelf software. You can have a software that automates, If you don't have that underlying research layer or framework layer underneath, then it's just an empty shell software.
Right. One of the things that struck me about your website is, frankly, the incredible amount of resources that you have available literally on a click-through basis for people like myself or people who are researching this. It seems that you're committed to, or Nymity is committed to, putting out solid information to help all forms of compliance practitioners, certainly the privacy practitioner, but really anyone who is having to research this from their corporate perspective.
The idea behind the research, again, and I don't want to downplay this, and it sounds like I'm overstressing it, but again, from Nymity's point of view, that's where we started, right? You need to understand what you need to do, what you need to put in place before you start putting a program in place. And so if that's our foundation, and we can simplify that through our framework, through the resources available and through our technology, then that's something powerful. Right. So we talk about the framework that is something unique to us. Right. So coming from the research, and we did actually a research, we looked at other organizations, what they were putting in place for their privacy programs globally. Right. So all these different global requirements, but we're actually organizations putting in place. And we created a framework that contained 139 different technical and organizational measures, and we grouped them in 13 different categories so that an organization can now structure their program by utilizing this. And in the back end, we mapped it to every law there is. There's over 900 laws. So if you're an organization, you could use the framework to build a program through our research. And then with that, you can use that to comply with not just one law, many laws. So as an example, GDPR maps to 55 different requirements from our framework. Okay. So if you've built your program around those 55 and not just to the rule of law, now a new law comes into effect like CCPA and LGPD or so forth. Well, what's going to happen? There's common elements. Out of those 55, there's about 15 or 20 that are the same thing, because at the end of the day, access requests, training and awareness, inventories, things like that are relatively the same. If you've already put it in place, then you've already done the work. But it's that research that we've put into it, right? So things like the framework, things like providing those annotations of laws and then putting those into the tool, and it's essential. And again, one of the reasons why TrustArc and Nymity have come together, right, in this is that we bring that research side, and why we were so attractive to TrustArc, and TrustArc was attracted to us because of the technology of bringing it together. But it's foundational on this research, right? So the framework research, content research, statistical research, warnings research, and to be able to now bring that to the TrustArc technology and the platform, again, what you'll see in the next 3 to 6 months are going to be very powerful products that come out that will help organizations. And again, goes down to the research.
Right. One of the things that I think compliance practitioners continually strive to do is not only assess risk and then move to a risk management strategy based upon that, but utilizing the most cutting edge tools is to speed that process up, because compliance has figured out that's actually a business advantage if they can assess risk and manage risk more quickly, more efficiently. Is that same concept true in data privacy risk management as well?
Yes, and this is where we've chosen to take privacy to another level, right? So when we talk about reimagining privacy, we talk about unleashing your data. The idea is understand through technology where your information is, what information you have. And then what you can do is identify what's high risk, right? And then look at mitigation of those risks as well. So once you understand where everything is and what's at risk and what you've been able to mitigate, then guess what? You're going to be able to do more with your data. You're going to be able to enable the business instead of disable. And that's where, through our privacy intelligence and the research that we put in, we're able to do. And that's when we're talking about that next level of privacy, right? So again, we think about privacy. That first layer is just, okay, I got to comply. These new laws have come out. And this is where I think it's an evolution of where privacy is going. And you see this in other compliance areas right now, especially in the US. It's new, and folks are still trying to understand, I need to comply with the law and taking that checkbox approach. But there's going to be a time when you need to take it to that next level. And again, being able to enable the business, be able to do more with information. And that's truly where it gets powerful, and where our research and methodologies and frameworks help with that.
Is that a message that resonates with your customer base as well?
Yes, 100%. It's a differentiator for us when organizations are looking at the market of what's out there. And there's a number of different players in this space, as your listeners may know, on the technology side. And I think for us, what we see as a differentiator and why folks come to us is that research, privacy intelligence, and what we call automated insights, side of things. It's this whole other level, right? So there's one thing of just having the research and 18 years of research, right? That's what we've been. That brings a lot to the table. But now to synthesize that and integrate it into the automation of the tools, that's what we bring to the table and is really a differentiator for us.
Right. Does that also work literally on a worldwide basis beyond Canada and the United States?
100%, 100%. And again, in regards to our research, we support over 900, I think it's last count, 965 laws. We've mapped those all to our framework. And so we have the research on all of those. And so we're able to provide that automation no matter if you are in California, you are in Australia, you're in Canada. We have your basis really covered in all those areas. And that's because we've always looked at privacy as a global issue. It's not a local, right? So again, in the US, you may be US only and you're thinking California. It's just a California issue. It's going to expand. Even though it's U.S., you look at those other 50 jurisdictions, think of it as something global. You got to look beyond just CCPA. And we've done that from the beginning. We knew privacy was beyond Canada, beyond U.S., so we focused on that, and so is TrustArc, and that's what we bring to the table. But it is something that is definitely global, and we support that.
Right. What are some of the top 2 or 3 issues that you and Nymity are looking at into 2020, even perhaps beyond, regarding data privacy?
Yeah, so I mean, in regards to some of the big laws and so forth that are going to have an impact, number one is CCPA, right? So that is going to have a big impact. Obviously, the really first elements of a privacy law in the United States. Nevada has come behind that. And then kind of touched upon this is then what about the other U.S. states and the impact of that, right? So there's been a lot of activity in the United States. I think there's about another 12 other states that are active right now. It looks like there's going to be more states that come up with privacy laws and more likely, more comprehensive than the CCPA one, potentially more like GDPR. So the other laws, and then there's LGPD. So laws is one thing. The second thing for us, and I go into this again, is that how can we make this easier for folks? Privacy is not getting easier. It's getting more complex, right? New laws are coming out. Old laws are getting updated and becoming more comprehensive. And so we think through our privacy intelligence, we're going to be able to do that by having the research embedded within the tools. And then the last piece we're trying to do for organizations is then helping provide insights. So you have all this information, you know what jurisdictions that you operate in, and then combining the technology and the research, be able to provide the insights of what they can and can't do with your information and provide more of that detail. And that's the third area. So again, other laws, but we're trying to make it easier because it's more complex through privacy intelligence and automated insights.
Ray, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but I was wondering if the listeners wanted any more information on Nymity, where could they go?
Yeah, so right now I would suggest, and we're combining our websites, so there's resources on both, but on Nymity.com and TrustArc.com. Right. And so you will have the information. Know that, again, the two organizations have come together. I'm not sure if we touched on this, bringing 40 years of experience together back in November. So in regards to the information, you can find it on both websites. Eventually, it'll just be the TrustArc. Right. So it's really Nymity powered by TrustArc within that brand, within that company.
This has just been a fascinating exploration of an issue that I certainly was not as up on and aware of. You guys really are reimagining privacy. So thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me, and I greatly look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
If you're a compliance professional looking for a convenient and effective way to fulfill your continuing education requirements, go to fcpacompliancereport.com/courses and choose from 4 hour-long training packages that will keep you current. That's fcpacompliancereport.com/courses.